When you're publicly shamed, this is the smart way to strike back. Welcome to Live Stoic, Live Strong. Have you ever swallowed a storm behind a smile? Someone throws a verbal jab. Everyone laughs, and all you can do is pretend you're in on the joke, even as your dignity takes the hit. Or maybe you've been mid-sentence, heart open, truth flowing, only to be cut off, dismissed, or, worse, ignored, as if your voice didn't even matter. And in that awful stillness, you force a grin. Not because it was okay, but because you didn't know what else to do. That moment, it leaves a mark, doesn't it? If you've ever felt that sting and stayed silent, not out of weakness, but out of wisdom, this video is for you. Because here's the truth. You're not alone, and you're definitely not broken. Society teaches us to snap back, to fire off savage comebacks, to own the room with clever rage. But the ancient Stoics, they whispered a different kind of strength, one that doesn't need noise to be known. They understood that the strongest response is no response at all, not because you're afraid, but because you've already won. In this video, we'll explore how to rise above humiliation, not with revenge fantasies or hollow confidence, but with the kind of unshakable inner power that doesn't need applause. No forced smiles, no dramatic speeches, just quiet, dignified strength, the kind that stuns even your critics into silence. So take a breath, let it out slow. And if you find solace in Stoic wisdom served with a touch of fire and a lot of soul, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. This isn't about clapping back. This is about rising. So high above, they can't even reach you anymore. Part 1. Let your results speak louder than their words. Let me take you into the story of a man named Robert. He was 56, a man of few words and quiet discipline. For over 20 years, Robert showed up. No drama, no spotlight, just steady, meaningful work. He wasn't flashy. He didn't crave attention. And in meetings, he was the kind of person who spoke only when it mattered. And people respected that, until one moment changed everything. It happened during a company-wide presentation. A new department head, young, loud, desperate to make his mark, decided Robert was an easy target. What started as a disagreement over strategy quickly spiraled into something personal. The new guy scoffed at Robert's approach, ridiculed his old-school thinking, and cracked a joke that turned the room into a wave of awkward laughter. Not because it was funny, but because silence would have taken courage no one there had. And Robert? He didn't blink, he didn't defend, he didn't even correct the lie. He just looked at the man, gave a small nod, and said absolutely nothing. Some people in that room mistook that silence for surrender, but those who have lived a little longer, they recognized what it really was: mastery. Because silence in the face of public disrespect isn't weakness. It's strategy. Robert understood something that can't be learned from books or motivational speeches. Something only time, pain, and experience can teach you. Any reaction, no matter how justified, would have fed the other man's ego. It would have turned a wise man into just another actor in a petty scene. Instead, Robert chose the response that hurts more than any insult. He gave that moment nothing. And that's just the beginning. Because what happened next, how Robert responded, not with words, but with quiet dominance, changed everything. Let's turn the page. Robert didn't react in that moment, but his silence wasn't the end. It was just the beginning. Like a stone unmoved by storm winds, he let the insult pass right through him. No bitterness, no defensive words, just quiet, grounded clarity. That was the Stoic way. And here's where the story begins to mirror the lives of so many of us. Because over the following months, Robert didn't vanish or fall into the background. No, he rose, not with noise, but with precision, with presence. While the others kept chasing approval, Robert was busy doing the real work. Behind the scenes, he mentored the younger employees, the ones still unsure, still finding their way. He became the steady hand during stressful projects, the calm eye in the storm, when deadlines loomed and tensions rose. While others jostled for attention in meetings and postured for applause, Robert quietly became the one everyone turned to when something actually mattered. And slowly, almost invisibly, the same people who had once laughed began to lean on him. Even the young manager who had mocked him. Eventually, he came knocking. Faced with a crisis he couldn't handle, he turned to the very man he once ridiculed. And Robert? He helped him. Calmly. Professionally. Without ego. Without revenge. Just unwavering grace. That's not just a rare story. It's a familiar one. If you've lived long enough, you've either been Robert, or you've seen him. The quiet one. Overlooked. Underestimated. Passed over because he didn't play the ego game. But here's the truth. The loudest voices always forget. The ones who rise the highest are rarely the ones shouting. They're the ones who keep showing up, again and again, with quiet excellence and relentless integrity. This is the kind of power Stoicism honors. Not explosive, but enduring. Because real respect? It's never granted in the heat of a moment. It's earned over years, through restraint, through actions, through character. Ask yourself, how many times have you stayed silent? Not from fear, but from wisdom. How many times have you walked away, not because you were defeated, but because your peace was worth more than your pride? Those moments, they define you. Even if no one sees them, even if no one applauds them, they shape you. Stoicism doesn't ask you to bury your emotions. It asks you to refine them, to take your anger and turn it into fuel, to turn your embarrassment into insight, to take every insult and use it as foundation for something greater. So the next time someone tries to shame you in front of others, don't give them a show. Give them silence. And then let your progress speak in whispers, far louder than any comeback could shout. Because when someone mocks you publicly, what they're really trying to do is trap you in that moment. Don't let them. Define yourself slowly, consistently, powerfully, through discipline, through presence, through purpose, and let your story, just like Robert's, become a quiet kind of revenge. Not loud, but unforgettable. And there's another move, just as powerful, maybe even more devastating. Let's talk about what happens when you publicly ignore the people who once tried to tear you down. Robert's silence wasn't weakness. It was control. And that kind of restraint, it shifts the balance of power, especially when it's done in front of those who once witnessed your humiliation. See, public ignorance isn't passive. It's precise. It's a psychological move, a quiet counterattack that leaves a louder impact than any outburst could. Because when someone tries to embarrass you in front of others, it's rarely about humor. It's not really about the joke. It's about dominance. They're testing you, looking for a crack, hoping your reaction, be it a flustered excuse, an angry comeback, or even just a glance, proves they had power over you, if only for a fleeting moment. That's all they need. That one moment, one flash of ego-fueled triumph. And what do you give in return? Your dignity, just to win a game you never agreed to play. But the Stoics saw through this illusion centuries ago. They understood that the greatest show of power isn't retaliation, it's restraint. Marcus Aurelius, the emperor philosopher, said it plainly. the best revenge is not to be like your enemy. And Epictetus? He hit deeper. It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. That wisdom? It hasn't aged. Because truth like that doesn't. Your reaction, that is your leverage. That is your freedom. And when you choose not to react, no eye roll, no sigh, not even a flicker, you deny your attacker the one thing they desperately crave: relevance. You've seen this play out before, haven't you? Maybe in a meeting, when someone tried to undercut you with a backhanded comment. Or at a family dinner, when a relative made a joke, with sharp teeth hidden behind a smile, excused with, "Hey, I'm just being honest." And maybe, if you're really honest, you've held back. Not because you couldn't say something, but because you knew it wasn't worth it. Because time has a way of peeling back people's intentions. You begin to see clearly. Not everyone deserves your energy. Not everyone deserves to stay in your life. That moment, when you choose silence not from fear, but from self-respect, it changes everything, especially when it's public. Because when you ignore someone who once humiliated you in front of the same audience that watched you fall, you flip the script. You don't ask for respect. You command it. People watching don't see weakness. They see emotional mastery. They see a person so grounded, so above the game, they refuse to play it. That kind of silence? It's not empty. It's filled with message. It says, "You no longer exist in my world." It's not cruelty. It's clarity. It's the decision to stop carrying what was never yours in the first place. Other people's projections, insults, and petty games. It's emotional housekeeping. And when those same people come back, and they always do, what do you give them? Not anger, not explanations, just distance. That's the victory. Not with a louder voice, but with a quieter soul. One that no longer has room for fools. And that brings us to something just as powerful and far more rare. What happens when you do speak? Once and never again. Earlier, we spoke about the rare power of speaking just once, and then walking away. Now let's see how that looks in real life, in the kind of moment that defines character more than 1,000 words ever could. Let me tell you about Thomas. Thomas was a seasoned school principal, a man of quiet dignity, well respected by teachers, staff, and generations of parents. With just 2 years left before retirement, his legacy was already built. Decades of steady leadership, integrity, and calm in the chaos of education. But all of that was tested, publicly. During a tense school board meeting, a young administrator, eager to rise, saw an opportunity. In front of the entire board, he accused Thomas of being resistant to change. The words were polite, even polished, but make no mistake, it was an ambush. A calculated strike. The young man framed Thomas as outdated, out of touch, even a subtle obstacle to progress. The air in the room changed. All eyes turned to Thomas. Everyone expected him to respond with a full defense, to push back, to explain himself. After all, decades of dedication were being reduced to a footnote by someone half his age. But Thomas didn't bite. No raised voice. No defensive posture. He simply responded, once. A single sentence. Clear. Calm. Measured. No anger. No drama. Then, nothing. He said no more for the rest of the meeting. No clarifications in the hallway. No whispered frustration afterward. And that silence? It echoed louder than any outburst could have. Why? Because most people are used to noise. They're used to seeing others flail when attacked, scrambling to protect their image, justifying, explaining, pleading to be seen in the right light. But Thomas did none of that. And in the hours and days that followed, no one remembered the accusation. What they remembered was how he handled it, how composed he remained under fire, how he didn't try to win the moment, but owned it through restraint. And as time passed, the young administrator's move began to unravel. His credibility slipped. Not because Thomas called him out, but because he revealed himself in the hollow silence of a man who refused to play the game. That is Stoicism in action. Say what needs to be said, say it with dignity, and then walk away. Seneca captured it beautifully. A wise man is content with himself. He doesn't need validation from those who distorted the truth. When you speak just once, with conviction, not emotion, you draw a line. You affirm your self-respect. You show the world, and more importantly yourself, that your worth isn't up for debate. The silence that follows? That's not surrender. That's power. Especially as we grow older, we begin to see what truly matters. We no longer chase understanding from those who aren't ready to receive it. We know that many don't want truth. They want spectacle. And you? You owe yourself better than that. You owe yourself the discipline to speak once, and the wisdom to walk away with your peace intact. That isn't weakness. That's strength, refined by time, and it's a kind of strength no one can take from you. Now, sometimes silence isn't the move. Sometimes there's a sharper tool, one that cuts not with anger, but with something far more disarming. Let's talk about how to use humor as a weapon, the kind of humor that leaves your critics stunned and the crowd on your side. Previously, we explored the strength of speaking once and walking away. But sometimes there's a sharper tool in your arsenal, something that cuts cleaner than silence and leaves a mark without a trace of aggression. That tool is humor. Not the slapstick kind, not sarcasm or cruelty, but the calm, razor-edged kind of humor that disarms the room and flips the entire script. Imagine this. Someone tries to humiliate you in front of others. Their tone is light, but the insult is barbed. They're looking for a reaction, for you to flinch, stutter, get angry, or shrink back. But instead, you smile. And with perfect timing, you drop a single, casual, devastating line. A comment so subtly sharp, so quietly clever, it flips the mirror straight back at them and exposes their insecurity, their performance, their need to tear others down to feel tall. You don't need to raise your voice. You don't need to explain yourself. And you sure as hell don't need to retreat. All you need is timing, poise, and the courage to stay cool under fire. Because real respect isn't earned through noise. It's earned through impact. Thank you for staying with Live Stoic, Live Strong. It means you're seeking more than words. We're here for that journey with you. And in moments of public disrespect, humor becomes more than defense. It becomes dominance. Psychological dominance. Because here's what they don't expect. They expect resistance. They expect your pride to crack. They expect you to lose control. But when you respond with wit, when your words glide in, light as air but sharp as glass, you completely disrupt their rhythm. You don't just protect your dignity. You elevate it. They're left confused. The crowd? Redirected. The social energy shifts in an instant. Where once there was tension, now there's admiration. People aren't leaning in to see you crack anymore. They're leaning in to hear what you'll say next. Not because they pity you, but because they respect you. That's the magnetism of composure. That's the secret power of well-placed humor. And when you land a smart jab, not cruel, but clear, it stings far more than any shout could. Because the truth, dressed as wit, lingers. The attacker walks away thinking they had the upper hand, until the laughter fades and they realize the joke wasn't on you. It was about them. And here's the brilliance. The moment ends, but the impression stays. Humor sticks. It echoes in people's minds. They replay it, quote it, laugh about it again, days or even weeks later. And the one who tried to shame you, they start to feel it, long after the crowd has moved on. This isn't pettiness. This is power. Stoic power. It's emotional mastery in real time. It's choosing precision over impulse, presence over panic. It's standing in the fire and refusing to sweat. Because when you use humor with purpose, you send a silent but unmistakable message. I don't need to prove my worth. I already know it. In a world that constantly tests your boundaries, where disrespect is often dressed up as banter, you don't win by roaring back. And you definitely don't win by folding. You win by smiling, striking when it matters, and walking away, unbothered, undefeated, and unforgettable. Because to you, it wasn't even a battle. You kept your rhythm. You kept your dignity. You kept your crown firmly in place. And that's what real strength looks like. It doesn't bark. It laughs and leaves. But now, there's one more hard truth you need to hear. Let's talk about the people who laughed with them, the ones who stayed silent, smirked, or smiled at your expense. After using humor as a dagger, gracefully deflecting an attack without breaking your stride, there's one more layer to address, one that cuts even deeper than the insult itself. Not the words of your critic, but the silence of those around you. Look closely, at the edges of the room, at the people who smirked, who chuckled, who looked down or away. That moment reveals something far more painful than any insult could: quiet betrayal. Because disrespect from an enemy stings, yes, but it's expected. Betrayal, though? From someone you once confided in, someone you shared laughter, meals, even trust with? That doesn't just sting. It slices to the bone. These are the ones who called you brother, sister, friend, who smiled to your face, but shrank when it mattered most. They didn't stand beside you when it got uncomfortable. They chose convenience over character. And that's not a slip. That's not a misunderstanding. That's a decision. Here's the truth that most people try to avoid. When someone tries to humiliate you, it's often about their own insecurities, their need to rise by pushing someone else down. But what about the people around you? The ones who didn't speak up, the ones who laughed, or worse, said nothing. They showed you exactly who they are. And if you're wise, you'll believe them. You don't need to confront them. You don't need to raise your voice or demand an apology. You just need to remember. Because silence, especially in moments of public pain, is never neutral. In moments of tension, silence is not peace. It is a choice. It is a side. That's where real boundaries are born. Not in theory, but in moments like these. When someone laughs at your pain, even if it's dressed as a joke, that laughter is not harmless. It's an agreement. It's their unspoken way of saying, I'm okay with this. People don't laugh at things that truly make them uncomfortable unless they secretly enjoy it or want to protect their social status. Either way, it's not loyalty. And if you let them stay close, if you keep inviting, engaging, trusting, you're not just forgiving them, you're training them. You're teaching them that your boundaries are flexible, that your pain has a price, and it's cheap. And here's the thing, most of them won't explain themselves. They won't apologize. They won't bring it up again. But they remember what happened. And deep down, they know you do too. So if you pretend nothing happened, If you smile back at someone who smirked while you were bleeding, you're teaching them something dangerous, that your presence costs nothing. And when your presence feels cheap, so does your worth in their eyes. This isn't about bitterness. It's not about revenge. It's about clarity. Cutting someone off doesn't mean you wish them harm. It means you wish yourself peace. It's choosing to stop carrying the weight of people who only show up when the spotlight is flattering, but vanish when the shadows fall. Because if they couldn't stand beside you in discomfort, they don't deserve to stand beside you in celebration. Your circle should be small, tight, built not on convenience but on loyalty forged in fire. So the next time you're disrespected in public, pay attention. Watch who laughed, who looked away, who stayed quiet when it counted. That moment reveals everything you need to know. And when you walk away, walk quietly. No confrontation, no grand farewell. Just the kind of silence that draws a boundary no one gets to cross again. Because when respect is lost, it must be replaced with distance, and nothing less. Now, let's talk about what it really means to make them regret ever picking on you. Not through revenge, but through undeniable results. After you've drawn your boundary in silence, after you've watched who stood by you and who didn't, there's one final act left to play. You rise. Because when someone chooses to embarrass you publicly, it's rarely by accident. It's not just an offhand comment or a bad day. It's a test, a calculated move. They're betting on your silence, but not the powerful kind. They're hoping for the uncomfortable, awkward kind. They want to watch you shrink, to see you freeze or stumble, to witness you force a smile and let it slide. Why? Because humiliation is about power. It's about establishing a public hierarchy with an audience. And the way you react, or don't, determines who walks away with control. But here's what they never see coming. Your silence turning into strategy. Your stillness hardening into strength. That's when the entire narrative begins to shift. Not through a fight, not through a clapback, but through something far more disruptive. Transformation. You don't raise your voice. You raise your standard. You don't plead for respect. You become undeniable. Because the goal isn't to argue. It's not to correct or convince. The goal is to ascend so far above the insult, they're left choking on the dust you leave behind. That's Stoic wisdom in motion. It doesn't tell you to pretend the pain isn't real. It teaches you to use it. Epictetus put it perfectly. Difficulties show men what they are. So when you're publicly humiliated, don't collapse. Observe. Absorb. Then evolve. And let's be honest. Evolution is the ultimate response. Not the flashy, Instagram-worthy kind, but the quiet, relentless, uninterruptible kind. The best comebacks? They're not shouted. They're built in silence. In early mornings and late nights. In the quiet grind, where no one claps and no one's watching. That's where you sharpen. That's where you grow past the version of yourself they tried to belittle. Where you build the discipline, the muscle, the mind that no insult can reach. And one day, you don't just walk back into the room, you own it. Not out of revenge, not for validation, but because you've outgrown the very context where they tried to define you. You don't need to block them. Let them watch. Let them scroll through your progress with clenched jaws and silent shame. Let your results be the speech they never expected and can never respond to. Because the best revenge isn't cold. It's undeniable. It's showing up in places they tried to keep you out of. It's being the name they hear in rooms they're no longer invited to. It's becoming so fully, so unapologetically you, that their laughter becomes irrelevant. Forget the saying that tells you to forget. You don't forget the shovel someone tried to bury you with. You remember it, not to resent, but to rise. Because pain, when used with purpose, doesn't leave scars. It leaves strength. You take the insult, you grind it into fuel. And then, one day, without needing a single word, you walk back in. Not bitter, not loud, just elevated. So composed, so radiant, that the room shifts. Every eye finds you, and every mouth that once laughed falls silent. That's how you win. Not by playing the game, by rewriting the rules. You don't prove them wrong, you make them irrelevant. Because by the time they realize what you've become, you're already out of reach. And all they're left with is the memory of the day they underestimated you. And that memory? That's their punishment. Now, how do you turn that pain into power, not just once, but for life? Let's take everything you've learned and build something unstoppable. After you draw the line, after you walk away with your dignity intact, something powerful begins to unfold. That's self-respect in motion. Let's be honest. Respect isn't something you beg for. It's not something you explain or argue your way into. It's something you become. And here's the twist most people don't see coming. When someone tries to humiliate you, publicly or privately, that isn't the end of your story. It's the beginning. That moment isn't your downfall. It's your origin story. It's the exact moment when the older version of you, the one that stayed quiet to keep the peace, that laughed along to avoid conflict, steps aside, and someone new steps forward, someone sharper, stronger, more composed, more dangerous in the best way. And the best part? You don't have to yell. You don't have to prove anything. You don't have to return the insult. You just evolve. You take that moment of humiliation, the one they thought would shrink you, and you build something they never saw coming. You don't humiliate them back. You don't play their game. You make their joke age poorly, because as time passes, and you rise in silence, as your habits sharpen, your confidence grows, and your results speak for you, that little joke, that smug attempt to knock you down, it becomes their regret. And you never had to say a word. Because your glow will speak. Your composure will speak. Your presence in the very room they once tried to dim you in will say everything. And it won't scream. It will whisper with power. So the next time someone tries to test your worth, don't bark. Don't flinch. Don't defend. Just smile. Smile like you already know something they don't. And then, get to work, like your future self is already watching. Because one day, they will look at you and realize they lost access to someone they were never meant to underestimate. They'll see the person you've become, and know, without question, they'll never get close to you again. That's not revenge. That's evolution. And there's one final piece to this transformation. Let's bring it all home, so you never again forget your power. Thank you for your time. If one idea touched you today, come back next time. It may reach deeper. Share this with someone who needs a quiet moment. See you in the next video.